Hello everyone! As I'm sure you can guess by the title of this video, this is going to be my art supplies collection and storage. I just wanted to pop on the beginning here as kind of a quick little disclaimer to say this isn't to brag. I'm just actually really like watching these types of videos to see how people store different types of art supplies and what they keep in their studio, how they keep them in their studio. So I thought I would make one to show you all how I end up organizing my art supplies. Also, I am very aware that this is more art supplies than any one person needs. I have been a professional artist for very many years now, so I've just accumulated a ton of stuff over time. Most actually of the art supplies that you will see in the video are years and years old when I was doing a much different type of artwork and not so focused to only a few materials. So definitely don't feel like this is the amount of art supplies that you need, because that's definitely not the case. But other than that, I hope you enjoy seeing how I store all of my art supplies. So basically, the studio is set up that the more used art supplies are closer to my work area here. So this drawer unit has lots of my most used stuff, and then you have some stuff over here and all of that. And then there are even more drawers over here. So I guess we'll start on the farthest point, which is this shelf unit. This is basically all surfaces, paper, wood panels, and canvases, all of that stuff that I'm really only grabbing what I need when I'm starting a new piece of artwork. So this is just in a bookshelf. I guess we'll start up here. These are all just my wood panels that I have stacked. That's really the only place that I have for these. They aren't necessarily the most organized that they could be, but this is what's working for me right now. There's even some armature wire and some sculpting materials up there too. But yeah, wood plaques up there. As you can see, they're kind of organized by shape and stuff. We have the ovals that I use the most, and then some of the more decorative ones and stuff, and then the more smaller ones. This shelf is kind of mostly mediums. Here we have my stash of the fixative sprays that I use all of the time, and then this kind of channel here is all mediums. So we have some crackle paste that I just got that I want to try out, gloss varnish, watercolor ground is back there. In the very back there is some coconut oil to blend colored pencils, and some turpenoid, stuff like that. This is just some extra masking tape, and then back there is some salt for watercolor paintings. In these two cases, I have my Prismacolor markers. I don't really use markers that much anymore, but I'm not going to get rid of them because I do use them for different things. But yeah. Not too crazy of a collection. This one is all colors, and this one is all of the grays and tones of gray. So you got cool gray, French gray, warm gray in the different percentages. Here in this area is all of my masonite boards stacked up in different sizes. So when I want to do a piece of artwork, and if it's watercolor, I'm going to tape it to a board. So grab a board that is the closest size that I need. I have some even that unfinished artwork that's still taped on the board here. So that's the masonite board section. Here we have a random wood plaque with a sketchbook, because I was planning on doing something with this particular wood plaque a long time ago, and I still haven't done it yet. As you can see, it's traced out. So that's kind of why that's stored there together. And then the rest of this shelf is kind of my most used paper. So all here we have, in like size order kind of, watercolor paper. So we have the smallest watercolor paper here that I use, then we have some bigger stuff. This stuff is hot pressed. Then you have some 9x12 watercolor blocks, and then this is kind of the more normal cold pressed watercolor sheets that are just in pad form. So that's kind of how they're organized. Then you of course get even bigger, some 12 by 12 squares. If the paper has like the labels on the side, I try and face those out so I can see what the paper is super easily. And then back here more, this is watercolor paper too, but then you start to get into different types of paper. So this is some watercolor art boards, so they're like super thick, like you can see that how thick the boards are. They're kind of like, well, they're art boards, so they are like mounted watercolor paper kind of thing. So super thick, super cool to use. And then here we have some Bristol board. I don't use it that much, but it is more used than some things and it fit here. Then some illustration paper, marker paper. This is also probably marker paper. We have a lone sketchbook. And then here we have some smaller sketchbooks just because they kind of were the same size as the next thing, which are the toned paper pads. So gray and tan toned paper in the smaller version. This is some other toned paper. It's kind of more like wrapping, like cardboard wrapping paper type thing, like the brown wrapping paper. This is more toned paper. This is the newer stuff that's thicker that I like a lot more. And this is the older toned paper, some pastel paper, and some black paper on the end. So that's the most used paper shelf. It's kind of like, it's the easiest for me to reach. That's kind of why it's on that particular shelf. And then this next shelf here, these are my Cricut mats that I just got, that right now they're just being stored there because they fit there basically. But then all here we have a whole bunch of canvas boards in different sizes. These are then just more normal size canvases and then some more gallery style canvases in various sizes. Then all here we have the wood board and panel section. So anything that isn't a wood plaque, like more of the flat pieces of wood here, that's where they go. I draw on those too. Some canvas paper that I'm not sure if I have actually ever used, because I just don't really use acrylic paints that much. More wood paneling, and then all of this is sketchbook paper and drawing paper. Some of these are full, other ones are just kind of backups. I don't use them as much anymore, but you know, it's good paper, so if I need it, I definitely come here and grab it to draw. Like, I will grab it if I'm doing a sketch for a wood panel or something, because I don't normally draw on the wood panel or plaque. I draw on drawing paper and then transfer it. So that's when they get used, but I'm generally doing watercolor artwork, so they just don't get used as much as the watercolor paper. And then of course we have my little armature dude here just hanging out. Now, this bottom shelf is kind of a mishmash of different really huge things. So in this corner here, you have my portfolios and stuff like that. Like, that's kind of where I store all of my already finished artwork that I'm not planning on selling at the moment. That's how I store it. That's also artwork. We have some sheets, like some portfolio sheets to protect artwork, and then this is some really giant watercolor paper, the Fabriano kind, that's why it's together, and then more giant watercolor paper, giant drawing paper, pretty big mixed media paper, and then some of the bigger canvases, bigger canvas boards, and then the bigger wood panel section. And then over here we have the, I'm pretty sure it's 18 by 24 big sheets of watercolor paper, Bristol paper, mixed media, and all that stuff. And then there's a few giant masonite boards in the back there, and then just more boards. some MDF board that I used to use for watercolor artwork, like to tape it down, but it's really heavy, so I don't use that much anymore. And then back here we just have a giant portfolio for really big artwork. So that is all the surface collection. Beside that, this is just some bigger rolls of paper. There's some black paper in the back, and then a giant roll of sketch paper. This is some vellum, just big rolls of paper that I don't really have anywhere else for, and they fit perfectly in between the bookshelf and one of the wall shelves. So that's where they are. Now in these two Alex drawers here, the top drawers aren't really art supplies, but the bottom drawers on them are. So this one, again, kind of working farthest away from my workstation in these lower two drawers. This one is kind of what I'm going to call the challenge drawer. So any of the Crayola products that I have bought or have found in my house when cleaning up, I put here as kind of like just to have them all together, so if I want to do a video kind of like experimenting with more inexpensive art supplies, or like we have the coffee because I want to try coffee painting, any of the like more challengey type art supplies that I'm not going to use for like my artwork necessarily, but I would use for video purposes, that's where they go. The glue is just in there because I've run out of room for the drawer that should go in. And then the very bottom here is kind of all just storage. So extra erasers, this is rice paper that I didn't have another spot for, so that's why that's there. These are to my drawing desk, some Winsor Newton Cotman colors that came in a set that I don't need right now, an extra journal thing in my design, the box for my Prismacolor markers, there's some extra moleskin journals and pencil case type thing, just things that are extra. This is a tabletop easel. Things that I'm definitely not grabbing for that frequently, or it's just kind of for storage type purposes. Now in this Alex drawer we have the art supplies that I just don't use that often. So in this drawer is the kind of drawing and sketch drawer, so the stuff I'm not using basically for every single drawing I'm doing. So we have some imitation leaf in various colors. Underneath that, some gel pens, some other types of pens and pencils, pastels, Chinese ink and one of the like Chinese ink grater things, some calligraphy stuff, other drawing pencils, some charcoal pencils, some water-soluble pencils, more drawing pencils, Prismacolor drawing pencils, charcoal, other types of lead and pens in these. I have a lot of these. They're really useful bin containers. They work really well for art supplies, and they stack really well too, as you can see in the back here. Like, they all stack together well, and they have the lid, so I'm not worried about like stuff falling everywhere. So I have a bunch of those. So you're going to see a ton of the really useful bins in the upcoming drawers and storage and stuff. But yeah, these I used to like a while ago. I was much more into using a whole bunch of types of mediums. I mean, I still am, but definitely I used to do a whole lot more black and white artwork than I'm doing now. Most of my stuff now is like fully colored pencil or fully watercolor, so the charcoal doesn't get used as much now, but it definitely wasn't a waste when I bought these because I was doing a lot more black and white drawing and stuff. And I definitely will pick these up. I mean, they're great to have because it will like challenge me to try other types of artwork and not get caught in a rut. But yeah, Graphitint, sketch kit kind of thing back there. These back, yeah. So this is like the drawing illustration drawer with, of course, all the different pastels and pencils and stuff. Oops. This next drawer is kind of the acrylic. It's one of the two. The next two are kind of painting drawers. So This one is more of the acrylic paint drawer. I obviously don't use acrylic paint that often, definitely not compared to watercolor paint, but I still use it. So this is kind of all of my acrylic paint brushes, and my brush tree. These are oil brushes, which I do have oil paints, but I actually use these brushes with the coconut oil to bend polychromos, because if you didn't know, polychromos pencils are oil-based pencils, so you can blend them out with oil. You can use a brush to do that, and I just got some oil brushes that are made for oil paint, just because I figured that was going to go better with using the coconut oil and the oil colored pencils with those types of brushes. Some modeling paste and heavy gel. That is a palette, and then we have some of the cheaper watercolor paints that I've had for years that, who knows, maybe you'll see those in a video soon. This is like an ancient gouache palette that my dad found in the basement that was his. That's just kind of chilling there. Brush cleaner, other cheaper brushes. Yeah, so that's that drawer. This drawer is also kind of paint, although this one I touch a lot more than the other one. So we have my oil paints back here that I don't use like at all. But of course, video purposes, that's kind of why I'm keeping them, because I do like to experiment with art a lot, so they definitely will most likely be used at some point. We have the extras of the bottle that I use for masking fluid. We have my original watercolor palette. This is what I used to use all the time before I got my Cotman colors, so this has seen quite a lot. We have, these are just empty tin palettes from my, you'll see in a bit, but I've taken the inserts out of them that hold the pans and put them with my normal palette, but they're like the outer casing if you were just using that as a palette. But I've taken the insides out, so they're just the cases, kind of. We have another plastic palette down there. This is some more watercolor ground. Some random new toothbrush that clearly was passed down to me for galaxy splatter purposes. And then this is, I don't even know what you call this. It's like the tape that you activate with water. You can use it to stretch paper out. This is, of course, my empty watercolor pans, as it is very somewhat obviously labeled. And then this is a tiny Cotman palette. These are some Cotman extra pans, and then back there we have my Winsor Newton gouache tubes, because I've emptied some of the paint out to a different palette, which you'll see in the more used art drawer section, but that's what those are. They are the tubes, basically the colors, so when I need to replenish the pans, I'll go and grab those. So coming back over here to the drawing kind of area, I have some art supplies in these cubes here. This is my moleskin and other types of hardbound sketchbook types of things just stacked in. This is actually like a pot or plate holder, and I like it because it keeps them all upright and they're not like leaning on each other, so I can easily just grab one and take that one without them all like falling down, like I'm sure you saw happen over in the paper and surface area. But yeah, we have just some watercolor ones, some sketch ones, different types. They're not all moleskins, they're just, like I said, hardbound watercolor sketchbooks and normal sketchbooks. They're the ones that I tend to use more often because I definitely tend to use them for more completed artwork. And I'm not really big on sketching, so completed artwork is generally what I'm doing, so I grab those more. And then in this one I have all of my colored pencils and that kind of things. So these two cases have my Prismacolor Premier pencils and my Polychromos, which are the ones I use most often. We have my Prismacolor Very Thin pencils there. These are some really awesome watercolor pencils that were actually a gift from Australia. These are some fine line markers and more blending and black markers, just kind of the basics that I am generally going to grab for more often. This is a Derwent, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, a Derwent soft pastel set. And then the bottom we have my Prismacolor Premier New Pastel set. So that's kind of my most used drawing supplies in that cube. Then I guess we'll go over here to this Alex drawer. The Alex drawers, I'm sure you've seen how many there are in this studio, but they just, to me, are the easiest way to store art supplies. The drawers aren't too deep, so you can really see all of your art supplies easily in the drawers, and it keeps everything super clean, and it looks really great. So, on top of this Alex drawer, which is definitely the most used art supplies section, we have my pad pucks that I use. They're like a super portable easel. Some of my painter's tape that I use the most often to tape down watercolor paper onto boards. And then we have one of my ceramic palettes that I use the most. On the side here, I have a magazine holder type thing that I just have all of my swatch sheets in. So we have my Daniel Smith color sheets, some color pencil ones, there's some marker ones, all of that stuff is in that one. And then I guess to the actual drawer unit itself. I'm going to go on this side so you can see stuff. So this top drawer is kind of my most used grab type of area. So we have some hand sanitizer, which might seem random, but it's actually like the best thing to use for cleaning up different types of like art messes and everything. It just seems to get everything off, from like acrylic paint to acrylic ink, colored pencil, anything. Hand sanitizer is awesome. This is just, I empty, I have a big one. So if there's like a big spill, I'll use that. But I have just this tiny one for like cleaning up even my dip pens. I'll clean the nibs off with hand sanitizer. I'm not sure if that's great for them, but it's what's working for me. So, small thing of hand sanitizer for emergency cleaning purposes. We just have some erasers here, more masking tape, some washi tape that I think is always been here, even though I don't use, like, I mean, it's brand new. I'm going to do a video. I was going to do a video about, like, creating art using washi tape, so that's why that's there. Other than, I have a feeling it's just been there because I haven't found a better spot for it. Some various types of sharpeners. These are some pre-drawn circles for a series that I started a long time ago. More of the blue painter's tape, an extra ruler, some of my Copic multi-liners, some latex gloves, just for if it's like a super messy project and stuff, that's what those are for. This is my Pilot drawing pen in its case right now. Some lead and stuff down there. This is masking film. That's like being extra. And then back there, I'm pretty sure I have, yeah, that back there is my electric pencil sharpener that I don't use that much anymore because I have my ultimate favorite, which is the KH20 pencil sharpener that you've heard me talk about way too much. So that doesn't get used that much, but it is more of a more used item, and so that's why it's in the top drawer. This next drawer is definitely the drawing drawer. So, as I'm sure you can be able to tell, I have art supplies kind of categorized by, well, the idea behind this was originally they were categorized kind of by the way you would draw a drawing. So, sketch supplies up top, then if you were going to ink the drawing, then you have ink next, and then what you're going to color it with, whether that be colored pencils or watercolor paint, any of that stuff. So that's kind of why the drawers go like this. So this is the drawing drawer of the most used section. And so as I'm sure you can see here, we have my collection of acrylic ink. This stuff is my favorite stuff. It's the Daler Rowney FW acrylic ink in a bunch of colors. But I do use it a lot to, well, the white I use a lot to splatter galaxies, but I use this stuff a lot to ink drawings and even just for sketching purposes. I mean, it's awesome stuff, super pigmented. It comes in a bunch of really awesome colors. So they're all together in this drawer. Then we just have some extra nibs and nib holders, some loose Copic pens that are the sizes I use more often, a bamboo nib thing, more pen holders, nib holders, all of that stuff. You have the actual nibs. I have them in a little case thing down there. They're all loose nibs. And then this is the packaging for my Pentel brush pen because it has the extra ink cartridges in it and the instructions. So don't want to lose that. This is my Noodler's ink for my Pentel pen that was in the other drawer. That's what I use for that. These are some Prismacolor colored, like they're the different color fine line markers. This is a pearlescent set of the FW acrylic ink. I just have them in the set still just to separate it from the non-pearlescent ones, just so it's easier to tell apart. Some India ink in a bottle. Back here we have the few Copics that I actually own, just some skin tone ones and some gray tone. I would love to own more Copics, but I really don't use markers that often, so there's really no reason for me to buy more. These are my Winsor Newton acrylic inks. I'm pretty sure they're acrylic ink. Anyway, the Winsor Newton inks that I have in gold and silver. Some art sticks, which are like pastels, and then some more soft pastels down there. This next drawer is my watercolor section. Now, you'll see in a minute, but I do have my main watercolor palette on my desk, basically at all times, but this is like the extra watercolor stuff that I grab very, very frequently. So on the top here, we have my Finetech gold palette and pearlescent palette. I just don't have that out all the time because I don't use it for every single drawing, but I do use it often enough that I have it right here. These are the pearlescent and metallic Daniel Smith colors in their tubes. Normally for the Daniel Smith colors I put them in pans, but the pearlescent colors I leave them in tubes because again I don't use them for every drawing, so there's no reason to have them taking up space in my normal palette. This blue palette is actually my gouache colors that I've emptied out. Here, I'll actually show you this one. Yeah. This is my gouache colors emptied out into this palette because that's just how I use them. Like, I just prefer to use, like, have them all out and ready to go for painting. That's a new palette, that's why it's actually really clean for once. So there's that. And then down here, there's some more watercolor pencils that I don't use as frequently as the other ones, but I still like to grab them from time to time. This is kind of like a cross between a watercolor palette and a gouache palette. We have a super ancient, actually that's not the ancient one. This is the Winsor Newton Cotton palette. That is the full, this is a bad idea. Let's bring it down here. This is the Winsor Newton Cotton palette that they are the full pans, and so as you can see, instead of the half pan palette that I use all the time, these are just some in full colors. I found it really inexpensively, so I bought it because they are the colors I use all of the time, and I think I left it on my desk for a few days, and for some reason, the plastic all yellowed. I'll show you my other palette, but like in theory it should be the same plastic, and it's still like pristinely white, so I don't know what happened with this one, but it's yellowed now. And then also in this drawer we have my White Knight St. Petersburg watercolor palette too, which I do use this one fairly frequently. It's just not my main palette. Yeah, I really like to use those colors a lot. They're really great, and they actually even come with a swatch sheet. You do have to like swatch them yourself, but they do actually give you a piece of watercolor paper to create a swatch sheet, which is really awesome. So that is my more used watercolor supplies. This next drawer is my less used watercolor supplies. So this watercolor palette, I'm not even sure what this one is called. but it's, does it say? No, it's all in Chinese. Oh, the Kuretake palette, yeah. So this is the Kuretake palette, which, again, is a really great palette. The pans are super huge, like, they're not even, like, full pans. They're, like, full pans and a half, maybe even more. But again, I just don't use this one as often anymore. I kind of have my favorites, and I seem to stick to them. But yeah, this is still a really great palette, and I will definitely, I'm sure, end up using the colors for something. There is quite a few unique colors in this palette. So that's Kuretake palette. These are my Daniel Smith colors that I do have in pans. So they're there, so when I need to replenish one of my pans in my normal palette, I can just go in here, find it, and squeeze some more out into the pan. We have my Dr. P.H. Martin's Hydro watercolors. These are like liquid watercolors, so they're super pigmented. Again, just don't use them as often, so they're in the second drawer. Back here we have my watercolor wheel, a Sakura palette, and then these are some ancient Winsor & Newton colors that my dad found again in the basement with a whole bunch of other art supplies, so they're back there. I don't think I've ever actually used them. Like, we're talking like, these things are older than I am. But they are Winsor & Newton colors. That was clearly not the one to open. And there are actually quite a few colors in these. Like, as you can see, there are quite a few colors that he had for stuff. So I'll definitely have to try those out sometime. Try like 30-year-old Winsor & Newton paints. But yeah. So that's what are in those blue boxes, is ancient Winsor & Newton watercolors. Put this back. This next drawer is all palettes and water brushes, other little like watercolor paraphernalia things. We've got some droppers, more water brushes of varying types, different types of watercolor palettes, or palettes that I would, well, some of these I wouldn't necessarily use for watercolor, but lots of them are more watercolory type palettes. Droppers, eyedroppers, yeah, just palettes and other watercolor type paraphernalia-y things. This drawer is kind of the mishmash drawer. I had, like, when I moved into this studio like 6 or 8 months ago, I ended up moving a bunch of stuff around, and this drawer ended up being empty, so naturally it kind of became the catch-all drawer. But we have some salt in more, really useful containers that are labeled. So we have the used salt that you can, like, definitely use again. It's just dyed, so if I'm worried about the color transferring onto whatever I'm working on, I will probably go and use the new salt. So kosher salt and rock salt. 2 different sizes of salt. This is just some Winsor & Newton medium masking fluid. This is just a cutout piece of paper that took me forever, so I really didn't want to throw it out. It was just a template though, but it still looks cool, and I figured I might actually use it maybe for a stencil or something. This is my old gouache palette, so this is currently just an empty palette. These are all new pens that I want to try out. So we have my glass pens that I didn't really know where to put. The drawing drawer is getting kind of full, so that's why they were there. And also the Pilot pens, just pens that I want to try out in future videos and stuff, so that's why they're there. Some sponges, some new watercolor brushes, some replacement watercolor brushes, like doubles that I wanted to have. Just new watercolor brushes and replacements for ones that are looking a little not great and probably should be replaced, so I've already gone ahead and picked up some of those. Sponges, more masking fluid, more, what is that? Slow dry fluid. Yeah, just mediums, kind of random stuff. The backup brush section. That's kind of what that drawer is. On to the next drawer. This one is my heavy body acrylic paint. So we have some giant tubes in varying colors that I've bought for different projects. some of the basics, you know, like giant black and all of that stuff. These are some of the older acrylic paints that I had, and then I have my basic set, which I still really love. Again, I just don't have as many opportunities to use it, seeing as I'm mainly doing watercolor art now. But these definitely get used for when I'm doing other types of artwork like armor, prop painting, all of that kind of stuff. So that's the acrylic paint drawer. I do end up using just like touches of different acrylic paint colors in different types of artwork, so it doesn't not get used, it just definitely doesn't get as used as some of my other supplies. This drawer is the tracing paper, transfer paper, all of that kind of stuff. It's kind of the basics paper drawer. So we have some transfer paper here, tracing paper that's pre-cut, and then rolls of tracing paper, and this is my masking film. So pretty basic drawer. And then finally on this bottom drawer we have lots of extra really useful bins, lids for really useful bins that clearly don't need their lids or have their lids on currently, different cases and containers, tins, all of that kind of extra storage stuff that I'm not currently needing or using. Now up to my desk. Now, always at my desk we have the stuff that I have out all of the time that I'm using constantly, so it's out all of the time. Starting, I guess, with the main feature, which is my most used watercolor palette. I talk a lot more in depth about this in my most used art supplies video, but this part is the Winsor Newton Cotman half pan set, and then this is my custom kind of, see, this is the insert that I was talking about earlier, about taking them out of the black metal tins. Daniel Smith paints, professional Winsor Newton colors, that's what's basically in there. On the side of my desk, it's one of those drawing desks, so it has these little compartments, a pencil sharpener, a triangular eraser, we have some water pen, brush pens on the side, some black markers, other erasers, more of the markers that I tend to grab more often for like different line art and stuff. Down, I guess sticking with the desk, there's this drawer part that has a bunch of my most used stuff, so ruler, scissors, X-Acto knife that I use to sharpen pencils, some extra erasers, some white chalk in case I need to transfer something, more mechanical pencils and erasers, some cutting mats, masking tape, a brush to like sweep off pencil shavings or like eraser shavings, any of that stuff. Compass, protractor, circle, template, all of the basic stuff. Then I guess also on the desk, this thing is from Muji. I love Muji, their acrylic storage is awesome, but this has my most used kind of sketching materials. So on this top shelf is definitely the most used, like this is what I will literally just grab this and take it to wherever I'm sketching. That's what those are. The next one is some of my extra leads that I use all of the time and more mechanical pencils that I use a lot. This bottom one is some just different lead hardness pencils, the two nib holders that I use most frequently with nibs in them, a couple of white gel pens, and some ballpoint pens. So that's always sitting on top of my desk like that. This is kind of a random palette that has little bits of transferred things and some salt. It's just kind of been sitting there always, and I haven't bothered to move it yet. This is some Kleenex paper towel things. I like using these for cleanup or like to have out if I'm blotting watercolor and stuff because it's thicker than a tissue or Kleenex, but it's smaller and like easier to bend, like it's softer than a paper towel. So that's why they're there, just for general kind of art stuff. And then this is my container of most used brushes. So as you can see, we got the toothbrush in the front for all the galaxy paintings, a couple of toothbrushes actually. And yeah, these are my most used brushes. They're basic, well, they are all watercolor brushes. Some of them you could technically classify them as like a more general brush, but I'm using all of these for watercolor brushes, and so that is why they are in this container on my desk. Then up on this shelf right above my desk, over here we have some kind of more general things. Another white gel pen, the white acrylic paint I use all of the time if I want an even stronger whiteness than the gel pen or gouache or something could give. Some blending stumps that I haven't been using lately, but again, a basic tool, a blending, like a piece of, one of those sandpaper holders that are for blending stumps, small erase, or small ruler, more pencils, some jumbo pencils, just a set of like different pencil hardnesses. This is kind of the pen section, so we have some metallic pens that I like to sign prints with, some ballpoint pens, my Pentel brush pen, pens in different thicknesses and colors. This is like my fine line marker section, so we have some Copics in sepia and black, and then some Prismacolor ones, and then just some extra ones on the side of sizes I use more frequently. Here we have like the white section of pens, so different types of white like paint pens and gel pens and stuff. This is kind of the small brush area and other tool area. So some straws if I want to blow some paint around and get a cool effect. These are for masking fluid. They're like silicone nibbed things. And then these are all really small brushes, just kind of organized by brush manufacturer. So we have my really tiny Coatman brushes at the end there, and then just basically really small brushes, because if I put them in that, they will get lost and I'll never find them. So they're in this. This is actually a marker container from Michaels, I think I got it. But yeah, it's meant for markers, but it works great for just holding any type of tool. Then on the other side, we have the epic of all epic pencil sharpeners, of course, because I use this constantly, so it needs to be right there. Then this thing is kind of a, I'm going to go around the tripod. This is, it was just like a wood container thing from Michaels that I painted white, and I use it for storage now. So this again is more of my more grabbed things. This container, again, really useful bins. That's why there's so many lids in that drawer, because all of these don't have lids. So drawing clips, these are some old tubes of watercolor paint that I just have there. If I was doing like a giant painting, I needed a big wash of color or something, and I didn't want to like blow through my entire pan of watercolor, I'll use those. Some more fine line type pens and stuff. Pencil extenders. This is my masking fluid bottle I use all of the time, and the gum eraser that I like to use to pick up masking fluid. More smaller blending stumps. This is kind of the drawer of erasers. We have an extra Moo eraser, which is what I use all of the time. One of the Tombow Mono refills. Some extra kneaded erasers, other extra erasers, some erasers for my electric eraser, that kind of stuff. This is kind of the random cube. This is all LEDs. Again, another really useful bin. This is all of my Winsor Newton Cotman tubes for the colors that I use the most, so I end up refilling my pans with these tubes like I do for the Daniel Smith ones or any of the other ones. Yeah, and then on top I actually have a couple of professional Winsor Newton gouache paints. They're just sitting there because it's easy for me to grab, and you can definitely tell the difference between the two things. Like these two are the gouaches, and of course like the lids are a lot smaller for the paints, so easy to tell apart, and I had the room, so they're there. This is the Winsor Newton Professional paint tubes. Again, they're there because they fit well, but also I end up using them, like replenishing the pans in my main palette. These are some watercolor brush, water brush ends, like brush parts, and the actual water container thing. And then there are just some other pencil sharpeners. And then the last thing, which is kind of the random kind of area, but it does have a lot of other backup stuff. This Alex actually has, drawer unit actually has all like more crafting type materials and stuff, not necessarily like fine traditional art materials, so I'm not going to go into that. But up on top here, we have this roundabout thing that does have some backups and stuff. So in the back here we have more Chinese type of watercolor brushes and bigger brushes that I don't necessarily use as often, like as you can see this giant brush. Yeah, so watercolor brushes that I don't use as often, but I still want out and ready to go. The Chinese brushes are actually really nice, I just don't tend to grab them, probably because they're not right in front of me, so I should probably change that. But yeah, they are more watercolor type brushes and bigger brushes that I just don't have in my main brush section. These are some scissors. They're actually, I keep them here because I pretty much only use them to cut fabric and more material that's harder to cut, so they're there so I don't use them for paper and like dull them out. An extra ruler, some super glue, and then finally this thing. So in here I kind of have backups of stuff. So here we have like the white gel pen section, so we have my favorite white gel pens and some other extra like backups of fine line pens that I use a lot. Some comic card, like ACEO pre-cut things. They've literally been in there for like probably like 7 years and I just haven't bothered changing them. Some colored like fine line pen things. Drawing clip. In there we have some black, like these ones ended up being like super dark leaded Ticonderoga pencils, but some pencils, other like basic pencils, and a pencil eraser, pencil extenders. There's some extra erasers down there. This is basically like the section of backups and stuff. This is a brand new water container for me that is just kind of sitting there because I haven't used it yet. Back here, some more white gel pen backups, another drawing clip. Here we have all of my colored Sharpies that I've literally, I think, had since I've been like 12, and they're still going strong. They're all right there. These are all of my brand new backups for my Prismacolor and Polychromo sets. I just actually added to this. So anything like, there's a point where it's like the pencil's getting really low, so I end up buying a new one for the set, just so I have it, so when the pencil like gets to the point where you can't sharpen it anymore, I already have the color. So that's kind of what those are, other than just lots of backups for white pencil colors and black, because that's what you tend to use the most often. These are some of the Tombow Mono eraser refill packs. Some other types of, some click eraser, eraser refills, some wood pen, blending stumps that are brand new, some other brand new brushes. They should probably be in with the new brushes. These are just some bags if I do anything like messy with paint or something and I don't want to put the garbage in my garbage can. That's why the bags are there. These are some more paint markers, some black oil paint, more paint markers, and then just a black acrylic paint and a white acrylic paint. And that's all of my fine art materials. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one.